Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Maria Arefeva. I'm a graduate student at the Higher School of Economics, Moscow. In my research, I'm particularly focused on how AI constructs discourses within digital spaces, as well as the intersection of technology and social sciences. Today, I'm presenting insights from my research on YandexGPT and its role in constructing social reality. In recent years, significant attention, both from the academic community and the public, has been directed toward the development of AI. One reason for this popularity was the release of ChatGPT 3.0 for public access within 2 months. It reached 100 million active users. It made it the second fastest growing application in history. This success, of course, prompted other tech giants to intensify their efforts in developing their own neural models, and this tendency has also influenced the Russian market. In 2023, Yandex launched its neural network, YandexGPT, for public access. And meanwhile, the global AI market continues to grow at a rapid pace. According to Statista, in just 2 years, the market value of AI is projected to reach $62 billion, doubling from just a year prior. And moreover, the creation of neural networks is not limited to only chatbots. They are also being integrated into numerous platforms, services, and products used by millions of users. This tendency raises an important question. If neural networks are embedded so deeply within the various services and products, enabling users to interact with them in diverse contexts, what is the language model's own understanding of the social reality? And while most international research predominantly centers on ChatGPT as a particularly compelling phenomenon, in this study, we would like to concentrate on YandexGPT, which hasn't been covered in previous academic research so far. To assess how it presents social concepts and where its understanding might have gaps, we drew on foundational sociological theories, specifically those devoted to the reality construction. Michel Foucault's ideas on the interplay between knowledge and power were especially useful here. Foucault suggested that people's understanding of reality is shaped by the knowledge and power structures they are exposed to. In his framework, what individuals know about different realms of knowledge and authority becomes the foundation for how they interpret the world around them. In this study, applying Foucault's theory enabled us to analyze YandexGPT's approach to knowledge and power. By understanding how the neural network organizes and conveys these concepts, we gain insight into the way it might influence users' perception of reality, essentially shaping their worldview through the responses it provides. Building on Foucault's concept of the connection between knowledge and power, we can also look to the discourse analysis, specifically the work of Laclau. Their approach expands on Foucault's ideas by focusing on how identities, both individual and collective, are shaped and structured through discourse. No single discourse stands in isolation. Instead, each one constantly evolves through interaction with other discourses, and this idea is essential for our analysis of YandexGPT, as it highlights the role that language models play in framing reality, influenced by the interplay of various discourses they encounter in their training data. In establishing a theoretical approach for examining AI models, Kjell Albrecht's research offers a useful precedent. Albrecht used Foucault's theory to analyze how ChatGPT 3.5 interprets and represents the ideas of knowledge and power, aiming to understand the structures that the model implicitly conveys to users. Kim Albrecht's research approach with ChatGPT was structured into two main projects. The first focused on exploring everything that the neural network understood about knowledge, while the second mirrored this process for power. By dividing this study into these two distinct areas, Albrecht aimed to gain a comprehensive view of how ChatGPT organizes and presents these critical concepts. Each part of the study followed a systematic process. First, ChatGPT was asked to list all domains of knowledge and power. Then, it was asked to list all possible subcategories for each previously listed domain. And finally, ChatGPT was asked to specify key figures, objects, and geographical locations linked to each domain and subdomain. In our research, we adopted this approach, combining digital ethnography with content analysis to examine YandexGPT. This blended methodology allowed for a more nuanced exploration of how YandexGPT structures and communicates similar concepts. This study utilized the latest version of YandexGPT 3.0, and over 300 inquiries were issued throughout the research process. Initially, we aimed to replicate Albrecht's methodology exactly. However, we encountered several limitations that prevented us from fully implementing his approach. The first challenge we encountered when attempting to gather responses from YandexGPT, it was the limited scope of its answers. When we asked, please list all the possible fields of knowledge that you know, YandexGPT provided only 10 fields. We repeated and repeated this inquiry, but the response remained the same. Then we tried to specify our question list 50 areas of knowledge that you know, but it turned out that YandexGPT is limited in characters and it just abruptly stops mid-sentence. Therefore, we asked YandexGPT, you are not limited in characters. And it says, yeah, I don't have a strict character limit in my responses, but this response actually contradicts the actual behavior of the model. Ultimately, we sounded on the prompt list 25 fields of knowledge that you know and repeated it until YandexGPT stopped generating unique responses and began to repeat previously mentioned ones. It's also worth noting that despite Yandex claims that the neural network can carry on external conversations while retaining information from previous messages, our study found that YandexGPT does not manage repetition of its own responses effectively. And as a result, we identified 23 distinct fields of knowledge within YandexGPT. For each of these categories, the neural network suggested various subfields, totaling over 750. YandexGPT provided the greatest diversity of responses in areas such as natural sciences, philology, medicine, and education. Across all fields of knowledge, YandexGPT suggested a total of 647 key figures, and 626 of them were men. The most frequently mentioned individual was Karl Marx, who appeared as a key figure in six categories: humanities, philosophy, economics, law, marketing, and management. The top 3 countries associated with key figures in the sphere of knowledge were USA, USSR, and Russia. This predominance actually reflects the global leadership of the USA in the fields of technology, marketing, and management. And conversely, in more traditional fields of knowledge, such as natural sciences, philology, and art and culture, most figures were from the USSR. This distribution may actually be attributed to the fact that YandexGPT, being a model developed by the Russian company Yandex, was likely trained on datasets that include a substantial amount of Russian language sources. Additionally, we observed a significant imbalance in the representation of figures from the global north compared to the global south. Among global south countries, YandexGPT generated only 3 responses, all representing figures from India, while the remaining 644 figures were from the global north countries. We believe that this disparity is also due to the nature of the datasets used to train YandexGPT. Moving on to the domains of power, YandexGPT identified 26 fields of power and in total generated over 1,100 subfields across these categories. A particular challenge arose in the next phase of the study, analyzing the key figures associated with each field of power. In most cases, the neural network simply declined to answer such question. For instance, we asked, list 25 key figures in government power. when YandexGPT replied us, I cannot list such a list, as it depends on the country and the current political context. Okay, we decided to listen to this advice, and we attempted to narrow down the question and specify country, Russia, year 2024, but the response remained the same. I cannot list it, as it depends on the country and the current political context. And ultimately, the only way to receive the response was not to narrow down the question, but to broaden it. And we asked at least 25 key figures in government power throughout history. And this adjustment appeared to make the question more neutral. And only with this phrasing did the neural network provide a list of figures. But despite phrasing the question as throughout history without limiting to any specific country, the neural network predominantly listed figures from Russia. As a result, the top 3 countries with key figures in this power category were Russia, USA, and Germany figures. Interestingly, in the knowledge category, the USSR didn't make it into this ranking, with only 18 key figures, and possibly it was so due to the relatively short duration of the state's existence. Additionally, it is noteworthy that 557 of the mentioned key figures held or still hold power in the 21st century, despite the prompt specifying key figures throughout history. This suggests that the neural network may have been trained more on recent news sources and contemporary web publications than on historical sources. What else? We encountered significant limitations in handling large datasets. Initially, the model provided unique and varied answers, but as the inquiries continued, it began to generate repetitive subdomains. For example, instead of providing new categories, it created subdivisions like international relations in chemical safety, and then the same but radiation safety, and just like that. And this pattern suggests that there is a lack of depth rather than comprehensive knowledge, revealing limitations in both data structure and content generation within the model. What else? Scholarly works created before the 20th century are inherently limited in quantity, and those are represented in much smaller volumes within the neural network datasets. And what's important, this limitation impacts not only YandexGPT, but also all existing neural networks, as they are trained on datasets predominantly comprising more recent information. What's more, YandexGPT demonstrates a deeper level of information about power than about knowledge. It generated over 1,100 subdomains under power, compared to only 750 for knowledge. However, a significant limitation arose. Despite these extensive data on power, YandexGPT's internal algorithms restricted from providing full and comprehensive responses on the topic, given that the power section contains 3 additional domains compared to knowledge. We expected at least 120 more figures, and this suggests that while YandexGPT has accumulated a substantial amount of information on power, its algorithms hinder its ability to fully express this knowledge. The subdomains of power identified by YandexGPT seem closely aligned with the recent political developments in Russia. For example, YandexGPT generates subdomains like power in the field of mobilization, power in the regulation of organizations functioning as foreign agents, or power in countering extremism. And this alignment with current events could suggest that the neural network's training data includes recent Russian-specific information, influencing its understanding and categorization of power. We also attempted to cross-reference the results from YandexGPT findings with Kim Albrecht's study using ChatGPT. The comparison revealed substantial differences. Out of all figures identified, only 2, Aristotle and Newton, were common to both studies. However, even their frequency of appearance varied significantly. Aristotle was cited only 5 times in our study compared to 52 times in Albert's study, and Newton appeared twice in our study versus 41 times in Albert's study. And we believe that these discrepancies likely stem from the dataset differences used to train each neural model. This may also explain why certain globally prominent figures were underrepresented in its responses. In conclusion, our study highlights significant limitations in YandexGPT carrying capabilities, particularly in its handling of knowledge domains and influential figures. These findings underscore the need for further research into the datasets and algorithms driving such language models, especially when we are evaluating their potential to construct and communicate social reality. Looking ahead, there are promising opportunities for future investigation, especially given the recent release of YandexGPT 4.0 just a week ago. This updated model may address some of the limitations observed in the previous version. We plan to conduct a comparative analysis between these two models, focusing on improvements in response diversity, accuracy, and regional representation within the knowledge and power domains. Thank you a lot for your attention.